Now, I know that I touched upon Saturn entering Pisces on March 7th. So the full moon occurs 7:40 a.m. Eastern time on March 7th. And then not long after that, at 8:35 a.m. Eastern time, Saturn is going to move into Pisces. Now, this is a very significant shift. Saturn will be in Pisces 2.5 years, okay? It takes Saturn about 30 years to make a complete go around through the whole zodiac. Pisces is the very last sign of the zodiac, okay? So this is extremely significant. Now, I did a 2023 forecast, which is available for purchase and download through my website, and I've linked that in the comments below. But I'm giving you the portion of Saturn in Pisces that I talked about in that video because it was pretty detailed, and I was gonna record a whole new video about Saturn in Pisces, and then I realized, oh my gosh, I already did a whole video about it. So I'm just going to give you what I recorded from my yearly download. This is just a piece of what is in that forecast. This can also give you an idea of what you can expect if you choose to go and purchase that download. It's going to give you the whole year of 2023 broken down both collectively and by sign in 3-month increments. So again, the information here on Saturn in Pisces is actually in my January through March forecast for 2023. Comment below, let me know what you think. And be sure to subscribe to my free newsletter at lisasalvatore.com if you appreciate this content. So it would be beneficial for you to go back, think back to March 21st of 2020, which coincided with the universal lockdowns that we had. Because on March 21st of 2020, Saturn entered the sign of Aquarius, where it has been since then and will be until the shift on March 7th when Saturn moves into Pisces. So think back to what were you learning? What lessons were coming up for you? What were you perfecting? This is emotional, this is physical, this is spiritual, any and all of the above. Because we all had to deal with Saturn in one or more areas of our chart and of our lives. So it would be wise to go back and check, where is Aquarius in your birth chart? That's the area where Saturn was transiting for the last 2.5 years. What have you mastered? If only what's inside. What have you mastered? What have you learned about yourself? Remember the way that Saturn operates. He doesn't necessarily want to not give us what we want. He just wants us to understand that hard work reaps the rewards. Saturn is very, very karmic by nature. That which we reap is that which we sow. That is a lesson of Saturn. So go back and look at all that you've learned, all that you've mastered, all that you've grown over the last 2.5 years. Saturn gets ready to start a whole new cycle in the sign of Pisces, and the collective and personal energy is absolutely going to shift. Now, one of the biggest shifts of 2023 is Saturn's entrance into the sign of Pisces. Saturn will enter Pisces on March 7th, 8:35 a.m. Eastern time to be exact. Now, Saturn has been in Aquarius since 2020. And then prior to that, Saturn was in Capricorn. Saturn spends about 2 to 2.5 years in each sign. Now, collectively, we see the themes of whatever sign that Saturn is in playing out, and also personally. And the thing is, Saturn is a planet that is all about structure. Its boundaries, its structure, its restrictions, its rules. It's about keeping things cohesive, keeping things kosher, making sure everything's moving along seamlessly, smoothly, properly. Whether or not everybody likes it doesn't really matter. That's not the job of Saturn. Saturn's job is hard work and you get the reward. It's a very karmic planet. It's the planet of time and it's the planet of karma. You reap what you sow. You know, Saturn is all about borders and limitations and restrictions. Saturn is also the planet of reality. It's the reality check planet. It's the planet of purpose and potential also. So there's a lot of good to Saturn, but he does ask us to work hard, not to cut corners. And it's when we do cut corners that Saturn comes back to bite us. And the thing is, while Saturn has been moving through both Capricorn and Aquarius, even though it's structure, you have to remember Saturn rules both Capricorn and Aquarius. So Saturn's quite cozy on his throne in the signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. And Capricorn and Aquarius are signs that are no strangers to hard work and structure. Yeah, sure, Aquarius does things a little differently and a little more eccentrically. Capricorn is a little bit more by the book, but they're both still very structured and they're more comfortable with rules and regulations. In fact, often strong Capricorn and Aquarius energy crave structure, they need it. So think about globally what we've been experiencing while Saturn has been in both Capricorn and Aquarius, which is 2017 to 2023 when Saturn will move into Pisces. So all of that to say, Saturn moving into Pisces is an extremely significant shift. It takes Saturn 28 to 30 years to make a full evolution through the whole zodiac. And when it gets to Pisces, Pisces is the 12th and final sign of the zodiac. So that means when Saturn moves into Aries in 2025, it's really going to be a whole new world. Now, what's really interesting about Saturn in Pisces, and I'm just laughing because Pisces is a mutable water sign. The symbol for Pisces is two fish swimming in opposite directions, okay? That is what Pisces energy can feel like at times. Now, in high vibration, Pisces is a sign of compassion and empathy and intuition. Pisces is the artist, the visionary, very creative, and can tend to float like water, like a fish in water. Pisces is a sign that is often associated with a lack of boundaries. They often have a difficult time blending reality versus fantasy. That's the lower vibration of Pisces, or the shadow side. They can live in fantasy. So with Saturn, the planet of structure, in a sign that, sometimes doesn't really know what to do with structure, doesn't even know the meaning of that word, it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out collectively. Now, positively speaking, Pisces is the sign of spirituality. It's all about connectedness, it's about peace, it's about love, it's about light. But again, in the low vibration, it can be all about addiction, having a victim mentality, numbing out, whether that's with drugs, alcohol, the news, whatever. It's about checking out and evading, escaping, avoiding reality. Saturn is the planet of reality. So this is going to be really interesting. There's going to be a lot of good to this, but we may see a lot of the lower vibration side playing out. Again, Saturn is order and structure, and in Pisces, he may struggle a little bit. Now, if you want to go back in time, think back to 1993 to 1996, which is the last time that Saturn was in Pisces. May of 1993 to April of 1996. That is the last time that Saturn toured the sign of Pisces. So we are culminating a cycle that began in 1996. Again, globally, this is about reinvention. Personally, it is as well, but not as significantly unless you have strong Pisces, and we're going to talk about that. But the question to ask ourselves is, how did we get here? We, meaning, collectively, how did we get here? And what's next? Remember, Pisces is also a highly intuitive sign, and this year really promotes and encourages us going inward, trusting our own intuition, knowing that we have the answers in here and that we don't always need to go outside of ourselves to get the answers, that we are divine beings, spiritual beings with a lot of intuitive knowledge. So you want to go in here first. And that's what a lot of this year, the next 2 to 3 years, are going to be about. Saturn in Pisces will help us along with that. Something else I want to mention about Saturn in Pisces is beware of the false guru, as I like to call it. Be very mindful about who are you giving your energy to. For example, if you're going to get a psychic reading, go to somebody reputable, because there are a lot of people in every profession that claim to be something that they might or might not be. And I will tell you that while Saturn is in Pisces, those that are spiritual bypassing, putting glossy, sparkly band-aids over the truth of what's really going on, and then promoting that they're helping others, or however you want to look at that, those that are not working out of an authentic place, they're going to likely get exposed in one way or another while Saturn is in Pisces. But we need that. Now that's going to also happen collectively, so let's keep that in mind. Really, what I keep saying is MYOE, mind your own energy for 2023. Very important, and be very careful about who you give your energy to. Now, if you have a Pisces sun, a Pisces moon, Pisces rising, okay? You're getting a Saturn transit. Saturn will be going through the sign of Pisces, so you have to check your degrees so that you can see when it's approaching, because Saturn moves kind of slow, right? He grinds on us, right? He grates on us because he wants us to learn a lesson, an important spiritual lesson about ourselves, about the way that we're doing things. So let's go back to Frank's chart, fictitious Frank. I'm going to show you this. Because Frank is a Pisces, right? So he's going to get a Saturn transit. So Frank's sun is at 20 degrees of Pisces. So he's kind of at the later degrees of Pisces here. So his Venus is also in Pisces, okay, at 12 degrees. So he's getting a Saturn transit to his Venus. So as Saturn progresses through the sign of Pisces, when it gets to about 7 or 8 degrees of Pisces, Frank may start to feel that impacting his Venus, okay? So what's Venus? Venus is the way that we connect, okay? Pisces is a feminine sign. So Frank may be called to question things about his relationships, his connections, his own femininity, because remember, we all have masculine and feminine energies. And because it's a conjunction, Saturn in Pisces with Venus in Pisces, that's a conjunction when they line up. It feels really strong, so it feels very intense. So whatever's coming up for Frank about his own love nature, about the relationships in his lives, his own femininity, the way he deals with feminine energies in his life, that could all be coming up for question. And it could feel challenging, but it also produces a lot of growth. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to feel that challenging if Frank is honoring his Pisces energy. If Frank is honoring his femininity, it won't feel as challenging. You see how that works? Now, as Pisces starts to progress further, it's going to eventually get to Frank's sun. So it's going to leave his Venus and it's going to get to his sun. Now, you have to remember that Saturn also stations retrograde, so he often goes back over the very same terrain that he started over before. So it's like we get a double dose of a Saturn transit, if not a triple dose. So it's like just when you think you might be getting the lesson, boom, Saturn comes back around with another one. And I want to stress that this does not always have to be negative. It usually is not negative. It's just growth producing, and oftentimes growth is hard. Growth will challenge us. Saturn's all about growth. Now, let's say that Frank had a Venus in Virgo. Virgo is the opposite sign of Pisces. So he's going to be getting a Saturn opposition. The opposition works differently than the conjunction. The opposition, think about it as oppositional energy, right? So that may feel more challenging for Frank if he had Virgo placements. So if you have strong Virgo placements, you're going to be getting the Saturn opposition, okay? Especially as it moves into the degrees, the range of the degrees of your specific planet. And where you have Sagittarius and where you have Gemini, especially if it's your sun, your moon, your rising, your Venus, your Mars, you're getting a Saturn square. Saturn squares, I'm not gonna lie, are a bitch. I have just gone through it. I had Saturn squaring my sun for quite some time. Also my midheaven, some sensitive points in my chart. And Saturn squares, again, looking back, they do force a lot of growth, but they also promote a lot of internal work. And Saturn on the shadow side can be depressing. He can depress us where he falls, where he lands, where he transits. So again, with a Saturn square especially, you may find that your emotional energy levels just take a nosedive. You're not feeling as good about yourself. So please just know that with Saturn squares can sometimes come a little bit of depression. Saturn transits in general can bring in depression, and it's not constant. It's going to be moments. It's going to be stretches of time. So if you have strong Pisces, strong Virgo, Gemini, and Sagittarius, think about these planets. Think about what they represent and think about how you can work on the energies to make it more constructive for you, because that's what Saturn wants you to do. He wants you to be more constructive. He wants you to use your time more wisely, and he wants you to do things that are karmically correct. And when you follow those rules, another word for Saturn, that's where you get the rewards. So yeah, Saturn transits are hard, but they do bring in a lot of growth. And guess what? Everybody goes through them. Nobody escapes them. Now, furthering that, if you are between 27 and 30 years old, your Saturn is in Pisces, so you're getting a Saturn return. That's at the end of your 20s, and that is meant to kickstart your adulthood officially. If you're between 56 and 59-ish, you're getting your second Saturn return, which I want you to think of that as a blessing, okay? Second Saturn return, because not everyone is blessed to get to those points in life. But when you get to that second Saturn return, that means your Saturn's in Pisces and you're between 56 and 59 years old, there's often something very karmic and repetitive that will come up for you. And what you should do is reflect back to your late 20s and where were you in your life at that time and what were the themes that you were dealing with, what was going on. There's likely something that was pretty significant when you look back at your Saturn. It's like your karmic classroom. So these times give your life, they give your work a higher meaning, a higher purpose. At least that's what they're meant to do when you lean into the lessons. It's cosmic review time with Saturn, okay? Now for everyone else, just look at where Pisces falls in your chart, even if you don't have any planets in Pisces. And think about what tools are in your personal spiritual toolbox. Do you pray? Do you meditate? Do you not do any of those things? Do you want to? What is your spiritual practice? What are your spiritual practices, if any? Remember, getting up early, walking outside with a cup of coffee, that's a spiritual practice. You don't have to sit there going, to be in a spiritual practice, let's be clear. Being spiritual is about doing something that speaks to your spirit. That's simply what that means. So let's keep that in perspective when I say, what are the tools in your spiritual toolbox? So where is Pisces in your chart? Because that is where Saturn's going to be hanging out. Now let me show you how to also identify Saturn. If I didn't show you this before, you'll actually see it right here, Saturn, see? So poor Frank is also in his Saturn return. I didn't even realize that. See, it's so funny. It's never a coincidence when I pick a random chart. He's also in his Saturn return. So when Saturn gets to 9 degrees, he's officially in his Saturn return, and Frank is getting beat down by Saturn. This is a time of spiritual reckoning for Frank. He needs to get real with himself, and if I knew Frank, if Frank were my client, I would be concerned for his mental health under this energy because it's Pisces. And so Pisces can also be very nebulous. So if this individual did not have a strong spiritual practice, and let's say his spiritual practice is drinking vodka tonics every night, I'd be scared for his health and safety because Saturn can depress us. Pisces is one of the signs that is linked to addictions and alcoholism and abuse of narcotics. I'd be a little concerned, and I would want to talk to Frank and say, look, you're going to maybe feel that pull to numb out completely and avoid all of this emotion. But that's precisely the opposite of what you want to do. This is where the growth ensues. Now again, when it comes to the collective energy, there's going to be an energy of stripping off the rose-colored glasses and getting down to reality. It's more about what is the true meaning of life. What is the deeper meaning of life? Why am I here? Why are we here? Saturn represents deep thought and seriousness, and Pisces is deep water. So there's a lot of potential depth that could be very present for this transit, and I'm here for it. I think this is going to be good. I do think there's going to be a lot to contend with medically speaking. I do want to mention the fact that, you know, we're still in pandemic-like energy in certain ways, and there's still a lot of strains of funky things going around, and Pisces is a very receptive sign, so you definitely want to be careful. Make sure you're washing your hands, mask up where you need to, take care of yourself, look out for others. Don't take it for granted, because I'm telling you, with Saturn in Pisces, we may see some more kind of like freakish stuff, freakish things going around, okay? Especially when it comes to air travel. So just be careful. So, you know, when you're flying, for example, just take extra caution. Public places, extra caution. Elderly relatives. Saturn rules our elders, let's not forget. Elderly relatives in our lives, don't take it for granted that they can just be everywhere and anywhere in public. Again, receptiveness. Let's keep this in mind. We all need to look out for each other, and that's what Pisces represents.